Hey guys, Eastwood Journey of Programming. We've got a resume here from Mark. We're going to jump into it in just a moment. I just want to make sure you guys know to subscribe down below, hit that bell if you want your notifications, and let's go and dive right in. Alright, so Mark sent us over this resume. You can see it here on the screen, and it's a pretty colorful resume. It looks fairly professional. I'm just going to go ahead and scroll through it really quickly. It's very visual. And right away, Mark really makes it kind of stand out with exactly what he does. He's mentioning he's a software programmer and developer. I think it's fine to write both. It's kind of redundant. If you want, you can just simplify that down to being a software developer. And then he's got his contact information on the top right. It looks like there's maybe a minor issue going on with the icons not showing up in my PDF copy. But not a massive issue. And going on from there, I'm just going to jump right into kind of giving a little bit of critique and feedback here. So I'm going to begin at the top. I do like the overall coloring. Now, printing this out, it's going to use a lot of ink right off the bat. If you're printing it out and sending it to people kind of old-fashioned, then that's fine. If you are sending it via email, it does look good. I do see a little bit of kind of space, a little bit of a white outline to this header area here. I'm not sure if that's a little mistake that's been made in Word or wherever you made this resume. I do like the idea of having your photo. Now, I removed your photo from here, Mark. Sorry about that. I don't know if you wanted me to keep that in here, but I generally like to abstract you guys out of the actual resumes when I can. So I do like the idea of having a photo. I don't think it's necessary for software development roles, but if you are kind of really feeling like you need to have it in here, that's fine. Let's go ahead and read your description here. So I already mentioned you could just simplify this down to software developer, professional software developer, and contractor with more than 3 years experience in the software development process. Languages, proficient in coding, testing, and debugging computer systems, and interfaces. Okay. So I think there's a little bit of wording that needs to be played around with here. You're a professional software developer and contractor with more than 3 years of experience. I think that this can be just kind of simplified to 3 years of experience. You don't need the kind of the following apostrophe here, and this 3 doesn't need to be capitalized. In software development, I think that's all you really need to write there. So it will just be professional software developer and contractor with more than 3 years of experience in software development. You could actually just cut out the second software development to say with more than 3 years of professional experience, period. And then I'm a little bit confused here with the process languages. It's this process period, languages period. And then you go into another statement where it's saying you're proficient in coding, testing, and debugging computer systems and interfaces. I think the second line is okay. This needs to be cleaned up a little bit. I hope you can see what I'm highlighting, but it just needs to be clarified. So perhaps you're trying to say that you're a professional software developer and contractor with more than 3 years of professional experience in the software development process or in the software development industry using multiple languages and kind of processes like agile or waterfall or rapid implementing. That may be what you're trying to say. I think it can be eliminated from this summary up here, and you could just say software developer with more than 3 years of professional experience. And then you could say that you're proficient in coding, testing, and debugging software. And if you want to say, you can also put in hardware and interfaces in there too. Moving forward, so we don't stay on that too long, let's go and take a look at your visuals here on the right. So jumping into this, I do like the column layout that you have set up here. I kind of like seeing the skills right away. I do like the visuals, to be quite honest. Now, they do take up a ton of space, so looking at your experience, you have some good experience, but okay, it works out for this. If you had more experience, then this layout with all these visuals may need to get reduced into something more simplified, so you have more room to enter your professional experience here. But for now, it's okay. I think that this entire skill section looks pretty. It may be something which recruiters or somebody that's really quickly looking at your resume may find to be useful, because they're going to find out exactly what you know and don't know. Reading off it right here, unless my eyes are kind of tricking me, I feel like there's some spacing issues. These are really minor. Perforce looks like it's lower to the bottom of the square or the rectangle. Jira looks like it's towards the top. They don't all look like they're centered, and then they don't all look left justified on like a left edge here. So little minor things. The percentages, let's see. This difference between 70 and 85 looks a little bit off. We're in the software world, not a big deal. We can abstract away the numbers, that's fine. I personally would just simplify it. I think that you could just list that you're skilled or proficient in Google Analytics, Amazon Web Services, Perforce, Motion Capture, Unity, Unreal Engine, and Jira. You could just make that a nice little list rather than doing this entire visual, but that's not a problem. I think that this could be a simplified resume that you're providing to the recruiters, and you're trying to get by them, and then you can have a more in-depth technical resume for the software engineering staff or the software development manager that's going to actually be interviewing you. Maybe that's what you could do, so you have two different resumes. One's a little bit more technical and straightforward rather than visual, and the other one's more visual in order to appeal to the people that are just going to be kind of running through 25, 30 resumes and trying to get through them in 30 minutes and barely spending a minute on your resume. That's just my opinion. Take what you may from it. Now, coming down to here, coding languages. I am kind of confused by what you're trying to say here. So, are you saying that you are a 5 out of 5 on C#, C++, a 4 out of 5 on Java, 5 out of 5 on Python and SQL? I'm just not sure. You have 5 squares for each one, and the only difference between them is you have a light square here under Java. So I think that's really confusing. I think if you really want to say how proficient you are, this should be consistent. Maybe you should have some sort of header here stating that it is either a star system or it's a ranking of 1 to 5. That would make it much more simple to understand, or maybe to say more proficient on the right, less proficient on the left, and then instead of using a darkened versus lightened square to signify what level you're at, just go ahead and remove this square if you're only 4 out of 5 squares on this one. Just my opinion. Your interests, let's see. So you should just make this plural. Interests, I think, would be good. You also make these plural, so that would just follow in line. Again, it looks like I'm getting some sort of icon error in the PDF that I've received. You may not have that in the PDFs that you're actually sending out to the recruiters, or if you're submitting it on job boards. Nevertheless, that's what I'm seeing, so note it now. Let's see. The next thing here, photography, Maya. Man, I almost want to say photography. And, okay. So you've got a whole bunch of interests. That's great. I think companies will like to see that you are interested in learning new skill sets that are related to software development, as well as kind of are teetering on the side of being maybe an aspect of software development. Because if you're into photography, you can get into basically CV, computer vision. You can get into a lot of kind of image processing. So that's great. Maya, you're probably doing some 3D modeling, maybe some animation. So if you're on the game side, which I'm sure you are, that's great. You've got a whole bunch of the design software. So you've got Photoshop, After Effects, animations and After Effects and such. Blender, 3D modeling, animations, etc. So you've got a whole bunch of interesting kind of extracurriculars here. I think this is fine. Again, if you wanted to simplify it, you could just make this a list. That'd be great. Yeah, I don't think it would offend anybody like that. But if you want to make this your visual resume that you're giving to the recruiters, that's perfectly fine as well. So let's go ahead and take a look actually at your left-hand side, which is probably the most important information in here. So let's go ahead and jump up to your education. Immediately, I don't know what these dates mean. So I'm assuming you're saying that you attended AI from 2006 to 2016. That's perfectly fine, but I think it's a confusing way to lay out your dates. And I think that it could just be clarified. You could just throw this right under Art Institute, North Hollywood, and right under it you could just put attended from 2006 to 2016. And then I assume this is supposed to be a Bachelor of Science. So normally I'm used to a Bachelor of Science as being a B.S. Now, if a BCS makes sense, that's perfectly fine as well. Going into your description here, subject that we have studied in are database networking, object-oriented programming. Okay, so you have some simple little wording issues here. I think what you're trying to say here is the subjects that we studied were databases, networking, object-oriented programming, artificial intelligence, and computer ethics. I have a feeling you did a lot more than that in your program. I don't think you need to add everything you did, but maybe you want to tweak this depending on the role that you're applying to. So if you're applying for a software developer position with a web team and you want to impress them and say that you've taken a bunch of courses related to maybe backend, then you want to note in here that you did take a databases course. You also took a networking course. You understand OOP. Maybe if you took a web development course, you'd want to put that in here too. So on the other hand, if you're applying for a job that's maybe focused on desktop software, maybe you want to mention you did OOP, you did maybe a hardware programming class, and then maybe you did multiple programming languages. Maybe you took a whole bunch of courses in C++ and high-level courses, which were advanced. So those may be good to note. Again, that's not a huge deal. You actually do have professional experience. As you put on more professional experience, your educational kind of classwork, relevant coursework becomes less required or less mandatory to post in your resume. So one thing I'm going to note on that is I think it's great to have education on here. I think it's definitely required to have your education on the resume. It's a PDF and I keep trying to highlight in order. But I think your work experience could take the top portion of this column. Now I know because you have this timeline set up here that may cause issues if you update your resume in the future. It's going to push down the education even further onto a second page. But right now, as it is, if you did get an additional job or some other contract work that you want to add on here after Kaiju Tank, then I assume you're going to have to add another note anyway, and that's going to push it on to 2 pages. I personally would rather see your experience first rather than knowing your education. You have several job experiences here, so I'd rather see those first. So let's go ahead and take a look at your work experiences. Not a big deal, but that's just my opinion on the organization of them. So let's take a look at your work experience here. And let's see, you worked with an interactive company. You dev. It's a little vague. I get that that's the title or the role you did. You were probably a software developer. I'd rather just see this labeled as software developer. And if you were doing some particular thing, like maybe a web developer, I would put that. Well, let's take a look at what you were actually doing. So you refined and improved the existing documentation system, resulting in a reduced labor costs via increased workplace efficiency. So this is confusing. I think it's great that you were able to reduce labor costs and improve workplace efficiency, which caused the reduction of labor costs, which is awesome. But it doesn't really explain any software development you did in the role. So I really think you need to rethink the way you're describing the work you did here. And then try to aim on the actual programming you were doing. So I'm not 100% sure of what you were doing here, but maybe you could rework it, throw in, if you did any kind of software development, maybe you had to do some design of some software that they were creating. Maybe you got some exposure to testing. If you didn't, and you have no software development experience under this particular role, then what you maybe want to do is adjust what you're talking about here so you describe it better. I don't know what the documentation system was. I don't know if you're talking about documentation as in you guys were using Confluence to store a whole bunch of documentation like design docs, artwork, assets, and then you guys were using that as your documentation as well. I don't know if you're talking about documenting source code. You actually went into all the source code, reviewed, maybe did source code reviews with other developers, and then you helped them comment and document what each script did or each class or that sort of thing. I'm just not sure here. The fact that it reduced labor costs and increased efficiency means that it was probably a higher level tool set. It'd be great to know. I think that'd be much more effective of a description than it is right now. Now, you achieved the project schedule goal alongside administering server admin for over 200 users in development. That's great. So this sounds like you were a sysadmin for a little bit or a server admin, whichever one. I think it's a little redundant saying that you administered server admin. I think you could just say, let's see, met project deadlines while administering the server for over 200 users across production or across development. I think that could be a good way of rewording it. If I had the Word document of this, I could just go ahead and help you out by rewriting it a little bit, but I'll just tell you like I just did. So I think that this could be rewritten to be a little bit more clear, and that would help you a lot, especially if you're looking for a software development role. That seems to be what you're looking for. I think with the way you have these descriptions laid out, it's a little bit too vague in terms of what software development you did. So that would help you a lot to be able to define it and provide better examples. So let's go ahead and jump into company XYZ. So conducted formal and informal product design reviews throughout the software development cycle to provide input on functional requirements, product. So I think you actually did a good job laying this one out. You actually broke down what you did. So you did formal and informal product design reviews, and you did it throughout the entire cycle. You tell me why you did it. So providing input on functional requirements, product design, schedules, and issues. And then also you successfully aided in the production goals of 3 applications down the marketplace. So that's great. I would love to know what those production goals were, if you're allowed to share them. And if you are allowed to share them, but you have to abstract them, then that's fine. You could probably find a way to reword it so you don't kind of have any intellectual property conflicts, but you still are able to get across the way you help them out. That would be great to know how you did that. One quick note on formatting. It looks like you have an extra space right here and right here. So at the beginning of each one of these bullet points, before your text, you have an extra space, and it's causing this to be misaligned. Minor things, but you know, some recruiters are going to hold that against you. Again, you have just QA defined here. I think this is fine. It's pretty self-explanatory that you're doing quality assurance. It seems like you kind of went above and beyond doing QA, and you also got to do a little bit of development or help in development, so that's great. Again, this is 2018, so I would assume you did it throughout 2018, which is great for you. Good stuff. I think that, again, you could simplify this. Maybe you can actually just say began or started 2018, ended December 2018. Started January, ended December. And you can do something like that. Let's move on to your next piece of experience here. So, Kaiju Tank in Santa Clarita. So, first of all, there's this huge gap in between this. I think, were you trying to align all of these dashes vertically to the top? Nope. There's one all the way out here. So, I think there's just an extra tab or some extra white space right after the title of this company. So, right after your title, Kaiju Tank. And I think that should just be adjusted. again, these dates, they make sense if I think about them, but I think for most recruiters, it would be much easier just to put 2016-2019. That seems to be a standard way of doing it, and I think it'd be much more clear. Next thing, let's see what you've done. So you provided coding services to clients from various industries such as telecommunications, e-commerce, website design. Okay, that's great. Coding services. I'm assuming you mean software development services like programming. That's fine. It'd be good to know maybe what kind of programming you were doing. Were you doing mainly a particular series of languages? Were you using a specific software stack? That information may be good to know. Collaborate closely with software developers and website designers. Great. I think it's always good to know that you have social skills. So that's a good thing to put in there. Ran tests in all software application programs until these are determined to be ready for turnover. So it looks like you guys... I'm curious what kind of testing you guys did here. Did you guys do like UAT, user acceptance testing? Did this go through like a full QA test? Did it go through white box versus black box testing? Did you guys do TDD on it, so test-driven development? I don't know from this, so it'd be nice to know a little bit more how you tested it. Did you guys use like JUnit or something like that, or NUnit? That would be great to know. I think it'll help you in terms of being able to attract companies to invite you to interviews. Just my opinion. Lastly, you oriented clients on program maintenance and troubleshooting procedures. Okay. I think that this is okay. You could probably just reword it. You could maybe say consulted and advised clients on, I assume by program maintenance you mean software development maintenance and troubleshooting procedures. I think that would be the better way of writing it. Overall, I think you have a decent resume going. I think a big problem you're going to face here is recruiters are going to take a look at this resume and they're either going to think that you are really, really advanced. That's why you have kind of really high level descriptions here, or they're not going to know what to think at all. And they're going to read that you have 3 years of experience up here on the top. So then now they're going to think you're entry, kind of like entry, mid-level, getting to somewhat experienced. And then they're going to read through, see that it's a bit vague, and think, okay, maybe this guy's inexperienced. So one way to at least make this all work a little bit better for you is to go in and make those changes I mentioned regarding defining things more clearly. You want a software development job. That's what your title is. You've been a software developer and contracted in that world too. So you really need to be able to portray your skills as a software developer in your resume. And it needs to be very clearly portrayed for the recruiting staff. And then it needs to be honest and also a little bit more technical for the engineering staff that's going to review it. So remember, the first stage is a recruiter or somebody from a recruiting firm is going to take a look at your resume. They have a role that they've been given that they need to fill, and they're going to do some sort of mix and matching, trying to see if the keywords fit the role with the keywords that they defined in that job requisition, and they're going to see if they think you may fit it. And that's going to be after looking at your resume for maybe a minute or something like that. Now, not all recruiters do that. Maybe some of them really do get to know you well. And not all companies use a non-technically savvy recruiting team. Some companies do recruiting with the engineering staff. They're the ones who will reach out to you. But in the cases that you do hit a recruiter that's not as technically savvy, they're going to read through your resume, try to pick out keywords that fit the job requisition, and then they're going to move forward or they're going to throw you aside. So you want to make these relatively technical, but simple enough for the recruiter to say, hey, this meets the software development things that I need for this role. Let me give this person a shot. And then after that, usually a hiring manager or a software development team manager will take your resume and decide if they want to give you an interview. And that's when you want to probably start breaking out the more technical resume, something that really portrays your experience honestly, so that they can get a good understanding of what you know and if they really want to work with you. And then they'll invite you in and you are in the interview process at that point. And then it comes down to your technical skills and your ability to communicate well, how you solve problems, etc. That's where the technical interviews come in. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thanks, Mark, for sending in your resume. I think you've got something good going on here. Touch it up a bit, and hopefully you send something back or send us an update about the changes you made. This is Isa with Journey to Programming. If you haven't subscribed, please do down below and share this video with your friends. That'd be awesome. Thanks, guys.